Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. Nawajt ta'allum wa ta'alim, dhikr wa tadhkir wa nafa' wa intifa' wa ifadata wal istifadah wal hasana tamassuki bi kitabillahi wa sunnati rasulih sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa du'a ila al-huda wa dalat al-khair ibtigha wa jalla wa mardati wa qurbi wa thawabi subhanahu wa ta'ala. مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني واشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني واشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني واشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يا غني. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين. Alhamdulillah. Mention your niyat in taking these Sirah classes. Fatiha. Alright, Alhamdulillah. Okay, last week we actually, so as mentioned, we'll be taking from this book from now on, right? The book, the prophetic narrative, a compendium of the sources on the prophetic narrative, which is a bridge, right? Volume 2, right? Translated by Susan Imadi Tamara Gray, right? Randa Mardini, right? Written originally by Anissa Samira Al-Zaid, right? So we're going to be taking from this book from now on, right? So that you all have a reference. Right, it's easier for you all, right? Because without a reference, it's harder to study, right? When you don't have a book reference, right? So and because of that, right? And I've been reading this, I decided that I'll go back a bit, right? And then we continue from there on, right? So that we will cover everything that is in here, right? And on top of that will be whatever we take from Habib Omar bin Hafiz, right? In his Sirah stories, right? Most of the other books of Sirah that is in the English language, you can most of it is like, I would say, mashallah, right? These are good works, right? But they are not exhaustive, right? They're just they're very brief. I would just maybe perhaps to suit to the English audience, I don't know. And maybe the English audience, they don't like to spend such long time studying the Sirah, Allahu Alam. That's why the books tend to be brief, right? Just to give the gist, and maybe for those who are converts, who are new to the religion, right? Maybe it's easier to learn the gist of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But the unfortunate thing about that is that when people learn it one time round, right, and they learn just the gist of it, right, the surface events, right, of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they think that is all there is to it, right? Whereas it's not, right? It's a lot more, right? So which is why, like, for me personally, I feel that because our people, like, because when traditionally people, they learn the same thing over and over again as they grow older, right? And as you grow older, you learn more and more and more, deeper and deeper and deeper, and that is the way it should be, right? But then just from the way of our own education system, right, that when there's repeated contents, people begin to get bored, right? Or they begin to say, we've learned this already, we don't want to hear this anymore, but whereas in the past, the adab was that when you hear the same thing, you listen to it again, right, with the intention of learning more things, right, from the same story, right? So it's actually of bad adab to say that, oh, I've heard this before, oh, I know this story, oh, like, it's actually very bad etiquette, right, to actually do that, right? But it's something that is so common, right? So common in our time, right? For me, like, when I teach children, right, I will read the same book, right, to them over and over again in Arabic, right? Because for me, but I will bring it in different ways lah. Right? But the same book over and over again, right? Because for them to learn the words, right, that's in the book, right? But of course, as children, right, they will say this book again, right? And when you test them, what's in Arabic, they don't know, right? But like because they know the story, right? But I'm not interested in you knowing the story, right? I'm interested in you learning. Right, what is in here, right? So maybe people will be like, oh, I've learned this part of Sirah already. Like, okay, tell me the story. Right, tell me the names. Tell me the tell back to me the story. If you've learned it, you should be able to tell it to me as how I told it to you, right? I mean, you should, or even better than that, right? But most people, they've learned it, and then when you ask them to tell them the story again, okay, tell me the betul about what happened. Right, you'd be like, I'm not so sure. Okay, how did it begin? What was the cause of it? What was the trigger? Right, then what happened? Tell me the details of it. Right, so if you ask people further, right, they have not learned. Right, they have not actually learned properly. Right, you've learned one time round. So alhamdulillah, we are all students of knowledge, and also I need you all to remind me to mark attendance. Right now, Rubat has made an app to mark attendance. And because mashallah, they put in a lot of effort, so I need to actually just I should do it lah, because they already did it, right? They told me to before I forget. Where's your sister? Okay. I need to do it now, because that's why they were asking like who still attends. Okay, I'm just gonna call out the name, but I'm actually in my I'm recording, so should I do it later? But I scared if I do it later I forget all about it. Okay, can you just remind me so that I don't forget to do it? Okay, I know Faiza's here. Present. Amira Burhan not here, right? Hanisa Kamal? Yeah, right? I'm going to see your names out loud. Okay, Juliana's here. Nabila's here. Okay. Rashida is not here. Shahira. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Or the Shahira last week. Okay, I'm just gonna do both Shahiras. And then Aisha is here. Ummi Atiqah. Rashida. How come everybody else's name not here? Your name, right? Why is your name not here? Huh? Oh yeah, that is here. Okay. I didn't see it. Okay, dah. Okay? Alright. Okay. Yeah, I put it down. Okay, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I'll do it before I begin recording, so I don't see your names out loud. Okay, so alhamdulillah, right? So we mentioned this. This is why we learn Sirah. You're learning it. You all not learning it like just on the side. This is all study. We're studying the Sirah, right? So this is not a class whereby it's like by the side you come and you lepak and then you just just hear stories. Right? It's actually a full study, right? And I hope you're taking it as a full study of Sirah. Right, so just from last week, there's one more hadith that actually I wanted to mention but I didn't mention, right, about the prohibition of alcohol. Right, so At-Tirmidhi narrates on the authority of Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and I think it was Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab. He's called Al-Faruq, Umar Al-Faruq. Right, Al-Faruq from the Arabic word Faraqa means to split, right, to distinguish. He's called Umar Al-Faruq, right, because he's the one who distinguishes between truth and falsehood. So Sayyidina Umar, and he gained the title of Faruq, right, because of several incidences in the time of Rasulullah. The first of which, right, is that Sayyidina Umar, right, he once said to Rasulullah that your woman should be under a hijab. That means your woman should be covered, right? And then thereafter, the law of the hijab came down. Right, so there was one instance. Another instance is that during one of the battles, Sayyidina Umar said that the prisoners of war should be killed off. right? And then thereafter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said under the verse that it is not becoming for a prophet, right, to hold ransom, right? But it is and he gets down the hukum of the prisoners of war, right, for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which was in line with what Sayyidina Umar's opinion was, right? And here in the issue of alcohol, Sayyidina Umar also, because he has such strong sense of rightness, he had a very strong sense of what is right, right? So even without like some people, it's in them to know what is right and what is wrong, right? Just in them, right? But not some people, they don't have it, which is why the Sharia, right? Not everybody knows what is right and what is wrong, what is just and what is unjust. Not everybody has a sense to tell, right? And some people are worse than others, and some people are better than others, right? It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in them, right? We took that today actually during our class with Hajj Abidin, right? About the whispers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places in people. Some people have a stronger, right, sense, and some people have a weaker sense. Right? So Imam Tirmidhi narrates on the authority of Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab, who said, "Oh Allah, make clear for us." So he made a dua, Sayyidina Umar. So Sayyidina Umar, he's narrating. He's narrating himself making his dua, right? And of course, you find throughout the books of hadith, Sahabas, they do narrate themselves, right? When they do something, they do narrate about it, right? And the ulama say this is permissible if someone does not fear ostentation or showing off. Right, so in the Sahaba, for them, when they narrate this, is just to tell the story of what happened, and they had no feeling of ostentation or any form of showing off. Right, so Sayyidina Umar, he said, "Oh Allah, make clear for us your ruling concerning wine beyond a shadow of doubt." Right, without any doubt whatsoever, tell us clearly what is your ruling on wine. Right, then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse, right, when they ask you about wine and gambling, right, say fihima إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. Right, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, when they ask you about wine and gambling, say, in it is a great sin, right, and some benefit for human beings, but the sin is greater than the benefit. Right, so that is the first revelation. So that was revealed, and it was read to him, and he said again. So Sayyidina Umar felt this is not it. Right, this is not enough. So he made a dua again. "Oh Allah, make clear for us your ruling concerning wine beyond a shadow of doubt." Right, so Sayyidina Umar knew that this is not the ruling. This is not supposed to be, because he felt in his heart, right, that this wine is no good in it. Right, it should be haram, but he won't say it. Right, but he's waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send down the law, right, on wine. Right, and then the verse of Surah Nisa was revealed, right, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Nisa, "Oh, you have believed, right, indeed intoxicants, gambling, stone altars, divining arrows, right, are all from the work of shaitan." Right, so when all of this was recited to Sayyidina Umar, so second level, of saying that these are all shaitan work. Why do you go near these things? I don't go near these things, right? And it was read to him. He said again, "Oh Allah, make clear for us your ruling concerning wine without a shadow of doubt." Right, so he is waiting for the haram to come. Right, the word haram, tell us not to go near it. It has to be haram. Right, so then finally the verse of Surah Ma'idah. So the first verse of Surah Baqarah, and then was Surah Nisa, and then that was Surah Ma'idah. Right, it was revealed whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Shaitan only wants to cause between you animosity, right, and hatred through wine and gambling, right, and bring you away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from your prayer, right, to delude you. So won't you stop?" Right, so Allah says, in the end of the ayat, right, "Won't you stop?" Right, and then Sayyidina Umar said, "And yes, we will stop." Right, we have stopped and we will stop it. Right, we will stop with this wine issue. Right, so subhanAllah, so someone who is and it's said that if you're a true believer, right, you won't even hesitate at all when Allah says don't do something, don't do it, just leave it and let it be. And that is the way we take Sharia. And this is why, mashallah, right, the ulama, they do mention all these incidences in the Sirah, right, for Muslims to understand, right, because you didn't go through the coming down of hukum, right, we just got hukum. And this is why it is actually beneficial to go through how hukum came down, how it was revealed, right? The background story, how this happened, how that happened, right? And you see, honestly speaking, anyone who argues against the hijab has not gone through the history of hijab. They have not gone through. They have not read it. They have not gone through it as to how the Sahaba saw it. They didn't see the stages, right, by which it was done. They didn't see anything of that, right? And they just take things out of context and they make their own law. Right, whereas they didn't see how the Sahaba saw it. Of course, when you do Sharia, the first thing you should see is how the Sahaba saw it. But the Sahaba will be the first, will be the ones who understand the Sharia the best, right? Because they were there, and with the Prophet ﷺ there, And so when the hukum came down, right, and of course, the way they practice the hukum, the Prophet himself saw how they practice the hukum, right? And if that was the way it was done, then it is true lah. It's correct lah, right? Well, the teacher is there right himself, right? He's right there, right, himself, watching what's happening. So how come like people who come later seem to think that we understand it better, right, than the people who were there in front of the teacher himself, right, with the ayat in front of them, and straight away they began to cover up. Straight away they understood what the ayat meant. It was not something that was vague, or it was clear to them, as clear as as it was to the ayat. Right, so mashallah, it's only so when it comes to hukum, when you want to learn hukum, you just study the Sirah, right, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright, so we are going into, right, before we go into the Khandaq, so because you're seeing we're going to go step by step, slowly. Right, because basically when I go into the Khandaq, right, all the in between small battles, all I skip, right, because I was like, we go to the major battles, right, and in doing so then I will leave out like stuff that Habib said, right, because he will go into all the small battles, right. So but most people don't go into the small battles, right, because most people didn't, but then I think I was stopped in my tracks and not allowed to skip small battles and go into all the battles, right. I mean, like, things happen, and then I was like, you know what, this is a sign. I need to go backtrack. I am not going to Khandaq yet, and to go backtrack and go into the small battles and speak about them, right, because in everything there is benefit, there is blessings, right. So the second Ghazwa of Badr. Okay, so basically what happened was that after Uhud, right, so now, okay, what has happened? The disbelievers figured that they didn't gain anything from Uhud. They figured it out, right? Uhud was not a win, right? It wasn't a win for anybody, right? Basically, it's just like they just went there, they fought, they went home, right? Nobody won in that battle, so it was like a wasted battle, lah, right? In some sort. But also, of course, it was not a wasted battle in with regards to the believers, right? Because with regards to the believers, is it recording? And with regards to the believers, it was a very painful and strong lesson learned that would never be repeated in the history of the Sahaba ever again. The Sahaba you would never find them in any other battle thereafter disobeying Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would not. They just wouldn't. Even in the Khandaq, when they were digging the ditch, if they want to go and relieve themselves while digging, they will go to the Prophet and ask for permission before they left the ditch to go and relieve themselves. They were so, obedient to the letter. Even want to go to the toilet also will say, "Can I go to the toilet?" They will go, "Can I go and go back home to my wife for a while?" Right? So they didn't dare do anything without the permission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahaba. So it was a lesson learned. It was not to be repeated ever again. And therefore, when you look at it from that point of view, Uhud is a win. Right? It's a win in that point of view. The Sahaba learned a very valuable lesson. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, and Allah caused it to happen for him to take his shuhada. Right? He wants to honor some of the Sahaba with martyrdom. Right? So he gave martyrdom to those who sought martyrdom. Right? And there was quite a number of Sahaba, right, who were martyred in the Battle of Uhud. So basically, Abu Sufyan, after Uhud, he says, our appointment is next year at Badr. Right? So another war to happen at Badr. Right? Badr, mentioned, it is a place. Right? Badr is a place. That's why it's called Battle of Badr. Right? Badr is a place. And they usually use Badr, right, because Badr is actually a known place. It is a known, like you say, field, right? Field without grass, right? Sand area. Right? It's a known flat area, whereby every year, the Arabs will come there and they will trade. So it's actually Badr is actually a marketplace. It's actually a marketplace once a year, right? Or they have the seasons as to when people will come there and they begin to trade, right? But usually it's empty, It's empty. But then once every 3 months, people will come there and they will have trade there. Right? So what is a known place? Right? Because you don't just name every area in the desert. Right, so like that place is known, is well known. So when the time appointed by the Quraysh at Uhud neared, right? So at Uhud, right, Abu Sufyan shouted out before they left to Rasulullah that our next appointment is at Badr. Which is why we're going through all of these things, because you're going to see it is fight after fight after fight after fight. The moment the Muslims made hijrah to Medina, and then the ayat of jihad came down and they were allowed to fight, right? It's really, they were fighting non-stop. Right? It was really tiring, right, on the believers, right, and it was something that was paralyzing. We mentioned before on them, right. So the believers would go back to Medina, right. They would stay for about 3 days, and they would go out for the next battle, right. And after the battle, they come back, stay about a week, go out to the next battle. They will come back, stay about 2 days, go out to the next battle, right. So it's like you never rest, right. And if that's the case, then how is the Islamic society, right, in Medina, the community, going to be established? You keep fighting. You have to go out for battles, right? So which is why eventually after the Khandaq, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, caused things to happen whereby they have the Treaty of Hudaibiyah, and that was a win. The Treaty of Hudaibiyah was a big win, right? Because stopped the battles, we have a peace treaty, we're not fighting, right? And that opened up the doors for da'wah, right? And ta'lim, and studying and teaching, right? And which was what they wanted to do in Medina. Right, so these battles are actually really paralyzing, right, for the Muslims, right, for them to actually develop, right. So and there is the truth of war, right? And up till today, war paralyzes. That's all war does. And war doesn't do anything except. And back then, it was just the men who were going out, right? Just the men, right? So these are the soldiers. Those who are involved in jihad are the ones who are going out and fighting. Now it's like the entire community, the entire country is involved. If anybody is at war, the whole country is paralyzed. So even the women, the children, the businessmen, the peasants, the farmers, all are, our modern day warfare is terrible. There's no benefit and there's no win. There's definitely no win, right, in this kind of warfare, because everything is destroyed. It's just destroyed. Right, and people are oppressed, and then people become orphans, and you have poverty, you have all kinds of things, which is terrible, right? So basically, the time came for them to meet again, right? So as he was leaving Uhud the previous year, he said, the appointment between us and you is about next year. And Rasulullah said to a man of his companions, say, yes, right, by the will of Allah Most High, right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he kept to his word, right? And he called the Sahaba and said that the time has come for us to go out to Badr again. And this happened in Sha'ban. And this is a year whereby Sayyidina, it's the 4th year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Hussein was born this year, right? In Sha'ban also, Sayyidina Hussein was born, Sayyidina Hassan was born the previous year, right? So at this point, so when the time came, right, to this meeting that Abu Sufyan so proudly announced to the Muslims at Uhud that we will meet you at Badr the following year, the time came, Abu Sufyan began to feel fear. He got scared. He got cold feet. He got scared. Fear gripped him. He didn't want to go forth. Right? He got scared. Right? And at that time, right, Nu'aym bin Mas'ud, this was before he became Muslim. Thereafter he became Muslim. Nu'aym bin Mas'ud, he came to Mecca and he said, I have promised Muhammad and his companions that we would meet at Badr. So Abu Sufyan said, right, to him, I have promised the Muslims, because in the Arabs, this is something about dignity. The moment you say you will do something, right, and you don't turn up, and then your enemy turns up, and everybody sees what has happened, it's really like no face, no face. The whole peninsula will be talking about it. You all made a deal to turn up to fight at the place. Your enemy turned up, you didn't turn up, you didn't show up. It's just like shame on you. Like, what's wrong with you? So it's a blow, right? And some people, they will just turn up for the sake of not having that happen and be destroyed anyway, right? They rather turn up, fight and lose, than to not turn up and look like a chicken. Basically, you're a coward lah. They rather die courageous than to live as a coward. They rather do that, right? So there are people who are like that, but Abu Sufyan was not one of them. Abu Sufyan would rather say Abu Sufyan. This is before when he became Muslim. Right, at that time, he would rather live as a coward than to actually die as a courageous person, right? So he said to Nu'aym bin Mas'ud, I promised Muhammad and his companions that we would meet at Badr, and the time has come. Yet this year, now he gives his excuses, and now this year is one has drought, right? What we need is a year of plenty and fertility. Our animals are tired, our animals are hungry, they're starving. Of course, everybody also kena lah. Drought means everybody is afflicted, right? I might say, we have like reasons why you can't go forth. They're weakened, right? I would hate for Muhammad to go forth and for us to stay back. I'm giving boldness towards us. Now I don't know what to do. Basically, I don't want that he appears there and he don't come. Like, what should we do? Right? So he says, I will give 20 camels, right, that Suhail bin Amr will guarantee if you can go to Medina and dissuade the companions of Muhammad from going out to Badr. That's the idea, right? So now you see, he's like, I don't want to go and fight, but I don't want also to lose face. So guess what? Okay, you go and try to get them to not go. Okay, so at least like it will come out to appear that we both disagreed, didn't want to go and meet, right? So it's not just me who chickened out, right? They also chickened out, we both chickened out. And so it's not a big deal, if that happened. And he promised 20 camels. So people are money lah, right? They will pay themselves out, right? They just, try to build themselves out of the situation. So you go, right, and you try to do something, right? So this Nu'aym, he went, he agreed, right? And he rode speedily to Medina, right? And he found the people preparing to go out. The Muslims are not scared. And here Habib, because Habib told the story, right? And Habib, and mashallah, and after, I really feel that like Allah was like, no, you're not skipping all of these things. Because I watch, I'm like, small battles. Interesting lah, but I'm like, like gonna stop, patah balik. You're not gonna skip all the small battles. You're gonna do the small battles. Okay, we're gonna do the small battles.
Can I interrupt for a moment? I'm a bit confused on the timeline. This is 1 year after Uhud.
This is the 4th year, yes. Badr happened 2nd year. Uhud happened 3rd year. This is the 4th year. So basically, Badr happened out of nowhere, right? It was not a planned battle. Uhud is a retaliation of Badr, and it is a retaliation of Uhud. So you see, this is how they work, right? It's like there's no end. Every battle has a retaliation. And this battle will lead to Khandaq.
Okay, so this is between Uhud and Khandaq.
Yes.
So what is
it's called the second Badr. It's a Badr, right? You don't have to be so creative about it. It's called Badr number 2.
And Khandaq happened 1 year later? Or
yes, the year after.
Also
No, the year after.
2 years after Uhud.
Yes, not 1 year. It's the 5th year. It's the 5th year of battle. Right? And this is why, Khandaq happened the way it happened, because Abu Sufyan got so annoyed that the Muslims came out and people began to ridicule the Quraysh. Right? So Abu Sufyan said, you know what, we're going to show them. That's why Khandaq came in a massive, right, because of this small battle that happened in between. And they call it Ghazwa still. There was no fighting. Basically, I mean, the story ends that the Muslims do go out, and the disbelievers stayed where they were in Mecca, and then they lost face. This is the story. That's the end of the story. Very simple. I told you that already. Right? What's going to happen? The Muslims are not going to be. Because when Habib told the story, he's like, you see, the Muslims, they are never frightened off, no matter what. And Allah says in the Quran, right? When it is said to them, the people have gathered against you. Right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the believers, it increases them in their faith. And they say, enough is Allah. And He's the best of those whom we rely on. And so the believers, right, they are not frightened off by anything. You see, for them, what's there to lose? You go fight in jihad, either you win and Islam spreads, or you get killed and you go paradise. So it's a win-win. I mean, like what's there to lose to them? They're not scared. They're not scared. This is something that people that the disbelievers are scared of. The Muslims have nothing to lose. Like how do you beat a people who have nothing to lose? They don't have anything. They're not even rich. They don't have money. Right? So it's only when Islam began to have wealth and people began to go and fight for the sake of wealth, or that's when they began to lose, right? There's a story of go side by side. The story of a man, if I'm not wrong, one of the pious of the past, I can't remember his name. Basically, right, he would go to the masjid every day, right? Every day he would go to the masjid. So one day shaitan, this is to show sincerity, right, against money. So one day shaitan comes to him and tries to dissuade him from going to the masjid. He tries to delude him from going to the masjid. He says, get off shaitan and get lost. Right? Don't bother me. Right? Shaitan says, no, fight me. Fight me. Right? And if you can fight me, then you can go to the masjid. So they began to wrestle. So he wrestled with shaitan and he pinned shaitan and he won. He said, don't bother me anymore. I'm going to go to the masjid. Right? So the second day he came out, right? And then shaitan said, was thinking about what happened yesterday. I think what happened yesterday, and you know what? I can't fight you. You're such a good person, right? So I'm just gonna, give you 2 dirhams, right? For every time you walk past, so that you don't bother me. I'm gonna put 2 dirhams here for you. So this man was like 2 dirhams. He took it. He went to the masjid. So every day, Shaitan will put 2 dirhams there. Right? This is how the plots of Shaitan. I don't know. So every day, Shaitan puts 2 dirhams there. One day, the man comes, and it's only 1 dirham. And he says, Shaitan, where's the other dirham? Shaitan said, no, I'm not giving it to you. I'll give you 1. And the man said, give me my other dirham. Right? And then the Shaitan said, no, I'm not giving 1. And then the man said, wrestle me. I'm going to fight you for it. Because the first time around, he won Shaitan, right? So he fought Shaitan for it, and Shaitan pinned him down. Shaitan pinned him. Then he was shocked. And he was like, the first time I pinned you, how come the second time you pinned me? And then Shaitan said, well, the first time you fought for Allah. Second time you fought for dirham. You're weak. And you're not strong. Right? So that's why you see the Sahaba at the beginning, right? The Sahaba were very strong. It's all for Allah, Allah, Allah. But as the Muslim empire expanded, inshallah we'll go into it, right? As the Muslim empire expanded, right, to all kinds of Muslims coming into Islam, right? Then you have people who fight for the dinar and dirham, right? That's when you have them losing battles to non-Muslims. Allah will allow them to lose because they're not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so this is, they're all stories that is, subhanAllah, it shows very clearly. And Shaitan knows, right? He wants to weaken you, he puts $1 to it. Right, he puts $1 to it. Right, so and there's one article once that someone was asking me about what is altruism in Islam and everything. I have not responded to her. So many people messaging me and they respond all these things. Right, so basically someone was asking me about it, and the thing about it is that, when you do something voluntarily, right? You just do it without being paid. You actually put in your best. The moment someone says, I'm going to pay you $10 for this, you do to the amount of $10, in a way. Right? The dollar there, you're being paid for something, you will do it to how much it's worth. Right? But if you're not being paid for it, right, and it's just, this is, voluntarism, you spend the nights on it, you do your project, you do the poster, you do this, you do that, right? The moment there's a dollar on it, right, sometimes you find that actually you'll do according to the dollar. Like how much you're being paid, it's not worth all this money. It's such a small amount, I'm not going to put in so much effort, that kind of thing. Right? And I found that, that it is true. There's an article about it, it's not a Muslim article, but they wrote about it. Right? How when someone wants to help you carry your bags, if you don't pay them, right, like for example, they will just do it. Like your neighbors help you out, neighbors kids help you out, everything. But when you pay them, right, they will look at the money. And then they will see, okay, this amount, okay, then we just do a small bit, not a good job. They pay us more, we do a bit more. So they begin to weigh their deeds with the money, right, and not for doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a psychological thing. You think paying them will make them do a better job. Actually, no. Paying them will make them diminish, right, the worth, of it, because you're going to compare it to the dollar that's being spent, and you can't pay them enough to make them, give their all, right? In a way, alhamdulillah. Right. So basically, right, it makes a lot of sense, eh? Right, so now Abu Sufyan, he sends this Nu'aym bin Mas'ud to go to Rasulullah, tell him and say that if you can do this, you get 20 camels laden meaning they have food and valuables on their back. So laden camels. We have the camels and they're laden. Right, there's a lot of wealth. There's like a fortune. Right, to the one camel is a fortune already, for the Arabs. One camel, even today. Until today, one camel is very expensive. You can just buy a camel. Right, this is expensive as a car. It's as much as a car. Yeah, camels are expensive. They're not cheap. They're big creatures. Right? And they're very valuable to the Arabs. Right? So to have 20 camels is a fortune. Right? So he rushed off to Medina and he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He saw them, they were already prepared. Right? He was already preparing for the battle. Right? So he pretended to be advising them. Right? So, and he said, right, this is not my opinion. Right, so he says, he was going around the Sahaba, so he's trying to in a sense inject, right, some sort of doubt in the Sahaba. Right, do you really want to go? Do you all remember in Uhud how the Prophet Muhammad SAW was almost killed? Do you remember, Do you remember how he was wounded, right, in Uhud? Do you really want to go? In Uhud, how many of them died? Do you know the Meccans are very strong this year? Do you know that they're coming out very strong? You don't just stand a chance. After Uhud, right, all of the Arabs in the peninsula are now behind the Meccans. They're all with the Meccans. So you're not going to fight this battle. It's not going to be anything good coming out of this. So he was going around doing that. Right, and then he was saying that and he was talking about the troops in Mecca being really this amazing army going on in Mecca. He's liar lah, he was lying the entire time. Huge army going on, and then all these weapons, and they're coming out, and you have no chance against them. Don't bother, don't bother going out against them. And then so this is so what he's doing is that he's trying to make the believers shake. Be not firm, right? And to make them lose their enthusiasm and make them fear, going out. So Rasulullah caught wind of what he's doing. And Rasulullah heard that there's some guy coming to Mecca and Medina, and he's doing this. And he's injecting poison in the hearts of the believers. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, by the one in whose hand is my soul, I will go out to them even if I go alone. Clear statement to the Sahaba. We are not chickening out. We do not. We are believers. So he says, I will go out, even if all of you are scared, because some of them are getting a bit scared, and there's a munafiq also around and whatever. So it's not helping, munafiq. they are spreading all these things. So Rasul said, I'm going out. Even if I go out alone, I will go out. You can stay behind. So the moment your Prophet says that, you're like, no, you go. We are coming with you. Okay, the Sahaba, how could you, you just, stay back, right? And this I'll go into the Khandaq in a while, but, it's not this interesting, mashallah fact that Habib was saying that the Khandaq, they took quite some time to dig the entire trench, right? But every day, the first person to come out to begin digging is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He will be there before the Sahaba. He's the first one out, right, and start digging, right? And then the last one to go to leave is him also, right? So he's from the beginning to end, he's just there, right, digging the Khandaq. Right? So mashallah, we don't dig anything. Right, so Rasul said that, and of course the Sahaba all now they panic lah. No. We also say as you say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. We will go out. Right? We will not be as how the Jews are, right, in the Bani Israel when their prophet goes and they stay behind. We will not be those people. We will be those people who will go with their prophet. So he went out, right, and he left Abdullah bin Ubay, right, in charge of Medina. Right, so Abdullah bin Ubay, remember that name? Abdullah bin Ubay is the munafiq, right? But he left Abdullah bin Ubay. Abdullah bin Ubay, the son of Abdullah bin Ubay, the son of Abdullah bin Ubay is a true believer. Right? And he actually, if in fact once came to Rasulullah and say, Ya Rasulullah, give me the word, I will chop off my father's head. He's a hypocrite. Right? So he's a true believer. Right? He knew his father is a hypocrite. He knew it. Right? So but Rasulullah said, no, let him be. Right? Let him be. Because for Rasulullah, they're here and they really said Shahada. And maybe one day he will hit them. Right? Just be a believer. Right? Don't be such a liar, right, about this. So he left behind, right, and then Sayyidina Ali went out, and there were 1,500 Muslims. 1,005. Right? They went out, right, and they actually brought their goods and their merchandise because it was in Sha'ban, right, and that was the time for the fair. There's going to be a marketplace because Badr is a marketplace. There's a fair going on there. So they brought their stuff, right, their merchandise, their goods whatsoever. Right? They got to come a bit earlier to do a bit of buying and selling. Right? Might as well you're there. Might as well do some trade. Right? If you're going to go all the way there, just do some trade lah. Right? So basically they went all the way there. Right? And then Sayyidina Sufyan, he left. He heard what happened, and he's like, we can't chicken out now. They left with 1,500 men and going on, right? So he left with 2,000 men, right, from the Quraysh, right? We're going to see what he does, right? He goes out with the men from the Quraysh, right? So when they reach, a station, a point before Badr, right? He stood before the army and he addressed them and he said, right, O Quraysh, you are in need of a year of abundance, wherein you have green pasture for your animals and milk to drink to benefit you. this year is a year of famine, right? So we, had it been a good year, he keeps saying this. He keeps saying, no, it's not our fault, right? We can't fight. It was a bad year, okay? It was a famine year. But it happened to everybody. The whole peninsula kena, right? So it's not like you only didn't get rain. Everybody didn't get rain. Right? So you can't keep giving this excuse over and over again. Right? So he's like, it's a year of famine, and so he came up with 2000, and then he said, I think our animals are still very weak, and we are all very weak because it's a year of famine. I'm thinking I'm going to go back. And they're not even there yet, they're halfway, and he got COVID.
So he didn't say prophet?
No, he to the Quraysh, 2,000 of them. He's the leader. So you see, Abu Sufyan, he's not Abu Jahal. Abu Jahal lain cerita. Kan? Abu Jahal, they were going out to Badr, right? And then they found that their caravan was very safe. So the motive for the war is not there anymore, right? And everybody wanted to go back because of the dream that Rasulullah's auntie actually had, right? So they were like, you know what? It's not going to be good news. And Muhammad never lies. But Abu Jahl, what do? You cowards, you women, go and wear your bukhur and go and wear your dresses and whatever. He makes fun of people. He's like, like you all calling yourselves men. You all like. So Abu Jahl has a trait, which is why in Surah Alaq, right, when Allah speaks about it, had he become Muslim, right, he would have been the greatest of them. Had he been able to overcome, right, that jealousy, or that whatever it was that prevented him, because he was a very smart man, and he had all the traits, of courage. You don't back down. You don't this. You don't that. Had it been used in the face of Islam, right, it would have really, made him one of the greatest Sahaba, right? But he couldn't get over himself, right? He couldn't accept the fact that Muhammad was chosen to be a prophet and not him, right? His arrogance in himself. So this is Abu Jahl has some sort of traits right, in him, right? But they were used in the way of shaitan, right? Not in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Right, it was right. It was said that Sayyidina Omar and Abu Jahl, right, they are actually uncle and nephew. So Sayyidina Omar is a manifestation of what Abu Jahl could have been. Sayyidina Umar, right? Because there was a Alhamdulillah. Alright, so he said, I am going to go home, right? I'm not going to go on with this. So he really got scared. So because he turned around, everybody turned around, right? Everybody went back to Mecca. Because if your leader goes back, like what are you doing going forth, right? And the people of Mecca, so when he returned to Mecca, right, they were called the army of Sawiq, right? Sawiq is basically, it's a drink, right, that is there at Badr school. And people began to make fun of him, saying that you all just went all the way to drink this drink and you went home. Right? And the reason why Abu Sufyan, he did this was because in marching out, right, one thing he was hoping the Muslims would turn back. Right? He was hoping that if we pretend, to go and we march with our army, and maybe they'll catch wind of that we're coming for a huge army and they will turn back. Right? So in a way, he's still hoping that they turn back, not him. So when he realized that they actually all out, he's like, and then he basically his true color showed lah, right? And then he went back. Like, this was Abu Sufyan before he became Muslim, right? Because of course after he became Muslim, then he's Sayyidina Abu Sufyan, right? So he turned back because he didn't want to say that he didn't even try. Whatever it was lah. This is why these battles were not one that was actually spoken about, because there was no fighting. Right? Any battle that is not there was no fighting is very rarely spoken about, right? I mean, unless you learn Sirah in depth, right, then you actually know about all these battles, right? But it's important to also know, because majority of the battles there was no fighting. Majority. So you only hear about 3, whereas the amount of battles that took place in time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, was about 74 altogether battles, more than that. Right, 47 he didn't take part in, 27 he took part in. Right, so and that was what was recorded. Right, there's more. Right, so the ones that we know about 4, 5. Right, because everything else is just, they go out and then didn't appear, went back. This is one of the examples. They went out, right? So basically what happened, so they went back, right? So Rasulullah, he went to Badr, he set camp for 8 days waiting for Abu Sufyan to show up, right? The Sahaba, they were buying and selling, right? And the Sahaba was saying that it was such a good year, right, for a trade that every dirham, they made a dirham over it. That means they got 200%. Right, so it's 100% profit basically. So the amount of money they brought out, right, they earned that back and 100% more. Right, they earned it twice. So when they went back, so they all profited and they had subhanallah. So Sayyidina Muhammad, and because of that, people in Mecca were chiding Abu Sufyan. Right? You coward. You see what has happened. Now you made it worse. Already we lost Badr, we went to Uhud, didn't really win, and now everyone's calling us a coward. This is not coming out well for us. Right? So you see, when all these things happen, and they actually led up to the Treaty of Hudaibiyah, if you look at it, the Muslims actually had the upper hand. If you look at the entire situation going on, up to Hudaibiyah, the Muslims had the upper hand. And in fact, when they came to Mecca, right, to do their Umrah, we're going to go into it, right, they had, the Meccans had no right to stop them. They had no right. And if it spread throughout the peninsula, the Meccans stopped people who are pilgrims from doing their Umrah, the Arabs were really mengamuk, and they get very angry with the Meccans because nobody to stop anybody from visiting the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Even your own enemy, you're not supposed to stop because you're custodians of the house. It doesn't belong to you. Right? It belongs, Nabi Ibrahim was the one who built it. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's house. It doesn't belong to you. So that the Arabs, while they are idol worshippers, they understood this. Which is why they also honored the sacred months. Because the sacred months are the months that surround Hajj. Right? Hajj, and then Rajab is the month of Umrah. Right? So you don't, it's sacred because people are going for Hajj. So they still, they exalt Hajj. Right? So and they exalt Umrah. Right? So actually, them at Hudaibiyah, and they were not allowed to enter. If the Muslims wanted to really, make a big deal out of it, make a big fuss, they could, because they had the upper hand. This is why the Sahaba felt like, why do we have to agree to this? This is ridiculous. This is not fair, right? Because we have the upper hand. We just came for Umrah. They have no right. So the Sahaba, they knew of the dynamics. Right, but of course Rasulullah had, of course from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guidance, right, and he knew what he was doing. Right, so you're going to see, so it's not like that they were actually, at the mercy of the Quraysh. Right, they were actually above the Quraysh each time. Right, so at the end of this situation, right, Safwan bin Umayyah, Safwan also later on becomes Sayyidina Safwan, he becomes a Muslim later on. Right, so he said to him, I told you not to set the appointment at Uhud. Like, why were you so bold to say at Uhud? I mean, you next year at Badr. Like, why? Right, so then now, right, these Muslims, they never back out. Okay, so so now because of you, right, we now have, everyone sees us as people who don't know how to honor their promise. When you make a maw'id, you make a meeting place, and you're cowards. People are calling us cowards. Right? So what are we going to do now? Right? So Sayyidina Abu Sufyan said, we're going to prepare for next year. Okay, and then they had no promise. Khandaq was not a promise battle, right? Because then they didn't show up. So when you don't show up, you don't have a promise lah. In Badr, there was after the battle, they swore, next year you watch out. Right, and then after Uhud, next year you watch out. Right, so didn't appear. Right, he didn't show up. So there was no next year you watch out. Right, so there was no promise battle. So Khandaq actually came out of nowhere. They were silently preparing for Khandaq. The Muslims were not told. Right, they were not told. So why the Muslims chose to stay. Right, because before they knew it, right, suddenly you had this huge army marching towards Medina. Right, so the Muslims chose to stay. All right. So in the 4th year, right, I'm not sure, have I mentioned the story of Salama? I did, kan? In brief. No. The marriage of Rasulullah to Salama. We're going to go through each of the wives. So Sayyidina Khadijah, we went into her in detail. up to her death, right? And then we went into Sayyidina Saudah, right? Basically, not much to be said, right? Except that she was the first wife of Sayyidina Khadijah, and he was married to her for 3 years before Sayyidina Aisha came into the household. And he was actually married to Sayyidina Aisha while he was married to her, but Sayyidina Aisha was not in the household yet until she was old enough to enter into the household. Then she entered into the household. Alright, Sayyidina Aisha only entered into the household in Medina. So now he has 2 wives. Right, Sayyidina Saudah and Sayyidina Aisha. Sayyidina Saudah is an older woman, right, who later on, as she grew older, she would give her days to Sayyidina Aisha. That means her rights lah. She would give her rights to Rasulullah, right? She would give it to Sayyidina Aisha because she saw that Rasulullah enjoyed the company of Sayyidina Aisha. Right? So she was there, Sayyidina Saudah, and she wanted to have the position because of what is promised in paradise. Right? So she's mashallah lah. She's a very humble, and she's like a mother Sayyidina Aisha. She's much older. Sayyidina Aisha was much younger than Sayyidina Fatimah Zahra, who is Rasul's youngest daughter. So Sayyidina Fatimah Zahra at this point, like, she was really like, in her 20s, right? Sayyidina Aisha still, 9-year-old girl, 10-year-old girl. Right? A good 10 years lah between her and Sayyidina Fatimah Zahra. So you don't think of them as, as women of the same age. Sayyidina Aisha is a small girl. and Sayyidina Fatimah Zahra, she's a grown woman. Right? So the next one that Rasul marries at this point is Sayyidina Salama. Right? Sayyidina Salama, right? She's also, a young Sahabiya. Right? Her story is that she, right, her name is Hind. Right, her name is Hind. So her husband Abu Salama, right, died from wounds, right, in Uhud. He died from wounds in Uhud, right. So after the death of her husband, right, the Sahaba began to come to Sayyidina Salama to propose marriage to her. And actually before her death, there are a few narrations about this. But the narration that is here is that Salama radiallahu anha, she said that she heard Rasulullah say, there is not a Muslim upon whom falls adversity who says what God ordered him to say. Right? To God do I belong and to him do I return. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. And then says, Ya Allah, reward me in my tribulation and replace it with that which is better for me. I give you the dua kan that time. Remember this surah? Yes, I've done this story kan. I know I can't write the dua up there. Ajirni bisu musibati wa khulfli khairan minha. So basically I've got done the story. Right, so basically she didn't think there was going to be anybody who could take the place of Abu Salama, and eventually it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so you've taken that story. Right, and then Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, and I've covered the entire thing. Right.
So she's after Aisha?
Yes, she's after Sayyidina Aisha. She's the third one. Right. So Alhamdulillah.
And what year was she?
4th year. The 4th year of after Hijrah, she was married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright, and the wedding feast was dates and butter. Right, there was their feast there, dates and butter.
Butter.
Yep.
How do you eat butter?
They just eat butter. We are so spoiled that we don't eat butter. People eat butter, when they're so poor. Butter is food. Maybe they get this, mix it up with butter and they just make it in some sort of like paste or whatever, and they eat it lah. Some kuih lah. Right, and then so Sayyidina Muhammad. So when Rasulullah married Salama, he asked for a leather to be spread, a leather spread to be unrolled, right, and he put on it dates, right, and then he said for people to eat, and that was the wedding feast. And then he says the wedding feast on the first day is an obligation, on the second day is an option. On the third day, it is boast and flaunt. Should we put this hadith up? Right. So the wedding feast is an obligation for those who are able to celebrate the wedding. And actually, last week when I was going through my hadith class with my cousin and a few of us, right, we went through the hadith about wedding feasts. Right, and a lot of which, like the worst of wedding feasts is the one whereby the rich are invited and the poor are left out. And so we went into the discussion about this culture of ours whereby we must give a duit salam. Right, you must put money in a pack and then you must give it. And people get upset and people don't give enough. Right, and then like some people have the mentality that if you go to a rich place, like a hotel or whatsoever, you should give more. Right, actually for me I have the opposite mentality. I actually do have the opposite mentality, because when I go to like a rich and pumped up place, right, I actually give less because I think, oh, they're so rich. And they don't need the money, they're so rich. Right, I don't think, I never see it as me paying for my meal, because you're not supposed to pay for your meal. It's supposed to be a belanja. Right, that is the sunnah. It's supposed to belanja the people. Right, in Tari, when they're so poor, no one gives anybody money. No, nothing, zero. You go there, you eat, you go home. Right, so like why, like for us, we get upset. And in the past, they used to go around giving out the berkat at the tables. Right, now it's all like hostage or something. And then you eat it around. Then you're buying the berkat.
If you don't salam, you don't get anything.
No, and then I wonder. Sometimes I already put the money in my bag, and my husband doesn't have the bag. Right, so then
Only you get, right? If your husband don't get, right?
yeah. How come?
Yeah. It's like that. But not all weddings. Some weddings
They also, yeah. I mean, they should, because it's not, you're not trying to buy the berkat. You see, ala kaca je. Some plate. I don't want some plate. Not worth it. I mean, yeah. So I mean, you look at the feast of the wedding of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The sunnah. The sunnah is to belanja. Right? So we were discussing that day. How do we? Not that you want to break the culture, but to educate the people that it's okay if nobody wants to give you duit salam. It's okay, and not to be upset, right? If someone gives you $2. Right, or give you that. My wedding, alhamdulillah, I was actually quite pleased. Some of the packets were empty. They gave empty packets, right? And then one even had a note in there saying, sorry, I don't have enough money. Right, so it's like, alhamdulillah, that you feel comfortable enough, but of course not comfortable enough to not give anything, because you feel shy and you don't give anything. But then you give zero, nothing inside. Right, so I mean, like we see our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You go to traditional societies, nothing. You don't give anything, and in fact, they'll feel offended if you try to give something. You don't give anything. If you want to give like a wedding gift, up to you, right? But it's not obliged that every guest has to give a gift. Like maybe you're close friend, like your best friend, your like auntie or whatsoever. You give a gift, wedding gift, right? That's it. But the majority of the guests give nothing. It's just to celebrate, right? So, and you don't have to think that, I can make a big feast, because the returns will cover up for the feast. That's such a wrong mentality. It's a wrong mentality. You just think, how much can I spend on the people? And I will spend on the people. And you don't think of how much will come back to me. Right? So, it's...
On the berkat you mentioned, is it better that the person actually give berkat directly to the person, or you come and collect?
Actually, the berkat thing pun it's a culture. It's a culture. In Singapore, they give berkat. And then they give berkat for all these things. I mean, up to you. You want to serve, you can go around having people pass out the berkat. But berkat is not like wajib to kasih berkat. Like how about you do a wedding and you have no berkat? You're like, where's the berkat? Everybody will come like, where's the berkat? Yeah, I know. Your mother was just like, you are having berkat, okay? But it's culture. So you can do whatever you want to do. You want to stand there and give out. You want to pass it out, up to you. Right? But it's no, I mean, you dah lah belanja people. Nak kasih berkat lagi. You cipu berkat, cipu. like, do you even deserve this? Right, so people are like, cipu say berkat. like some Apollo cake apa. Like, why are they so cheap? People must know what are their rights. It's not your right to have duit salam, and it's not your right to have berkat. Right? And even the food, he just some give dates. That was what he could afford. Right? So it's okay if people want to belanja a lot. It's not okay if it becomes it is imposed on people to the point they take debt. They take debts into it, right? Or they blow like 20k, or now 20k pun sikit right? They blow 50k up to 60k on a one day event. You know what that is? It's rough. It's called wasting. You're wasting your money. Wastage. Right? So subhanallah. So, and this is from the hadith, by the first day obligation, right, to celebrate the marriage. Second day option if you want the second day. Third day you're boasting. Right, and it's even worse if you don't even have the money for it, and you're taking debts for it, and you're having a 3-day event, like you're boasting what you don't have. It's even sadder. Like, you don't have the money for it, and you're boasting what you don't have. So Salamah said, when Rasulullah married me, he moved into the house of Zainab bin Khuzaimah, right, the mother of poor after her death. I found Zainab bin Khuzaimah. I found a jar. I looked and found some barley in it. There was also a pot, a mortar, right, and an urn of stone and some fat in it. I took the barley and ground it and mixed it and the fat and cooked it, and that was Rasul's food and his wives on his wedding night. Right, so the people of Medina would say that the window of Salamah entered upon the master of Islam and Muslims in the early evening as a bride, and though she began to grind the latter part of the night, and she being the mother of believers. Right, so basically, in the first night, she herself fixed her own dinner, right, using some barley and fat, and then she just made some food. Right, so the food is like it's just whatever they found. They just mix together and makan, like whatever it is. Right, so and when he married her, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to her, "Verily, I have sent a gift to the negus, right? A measure of I have sent as a gift to the negus a measure of musk and hulla. Right, hulla is some sort of clothing, right, from the negus. Right, I believe that he has died, and it's likely the gift will be returned to me." So some sent, and then the negus actually had passed away by then. Right, and then if it's going to be returned, then it is for you. Right, so of course at that point, the negus had passed away, and it was gotten back. Right, and then he gave each of his he distributed, right, to amongst his wives, right, this musk, and so basically he gave gifts to his wife. The sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do so, right. So and then it was needed that Rasulullah moved in with her. He stayed with her for 3 days, right, and then he said, "You are honored amongst your family. If you wish, I will remain with you for 7 days, and then I must give my other wives 7 days each." Right, in narration, if you wish, I will increase your days now and count them for you, right, later on. Right, so basically this is what is mentioned. The thing about people want to do the fikir of having more than one wife right. Sayyidina Saudah had no issue. She was an only wife at the point of marriage, right. Sayyidina Aisha, young wife, right. So when he moved in with her, right, he gave her 7 days. Right, and that is the thing about the 7 days is about the virgin. Right, she gets 7 days straight, right, of being when she's newlywed, right. That is so that she can ease, with her husband, right. For the widow and the divorcee, right, 3 days, right, because she's used to it. She's used to men. So she's not like new, to the marriage and whatever, right. So that is the mercy of Islam that they have this onto women. Right, of course, she chose 3 days For her, she has children, and she has 4 kids. She has 4 kids from her first husband. Right, she has no kids from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, she was very beautiful. Right, and Sayyidina Aisha, at this point, Sayyidina Hafsa was married to Rasulullah also. They didn't mention Sayyidina Hafsa. Right, Sayyidina Hafsa was married. To Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned the other book. Right, Sayyidina Hafsa was married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because her husband passed away. Right, so Sayyidina Hafsa's marriage I didn't mention to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right. So basically the marriage of Sayyidina Hafsa, I just mentioned very, very, very briefly, because here you mentioned Sayyidina Aisha actually went out to see Salamah when she married Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's see who's a new wife. She would do it every single time, Sayyidina Aisha. Whenever she have a new wife, she just go and she'll just see, and she's so beautiful. And then so she went back to Sayyidina Hafsa and she's like, she's so beautiful, she's gorgeous, she's all what. And then Sayyidina Hafsa was like, no lah, it's your jealous eye that's saying all that. She's just normal. She's normal looking. And then Sayyidina Hafsa went out and she's like, yeah, she's normal. And she went back. And said, Aisha, I don't think she's as beautiful as you make her out to be. It's your jealousy who's that speaking. And then Sayyidina Aisha went back and she was looking at her. Yeah, right. She's not as the first time I went, it was my jealousy speaking. Second time I went, I was like, no, she looks normal. Like, she's not, Right, so Sayyidina Hafsa's story is that her husband was martyred, right? I can't remember which battle it was, Battle of Badr. Basically, one of the battles, her husband was martyred, right? Sayyidina Umar, after the martyrdom of his son-in-law, Sayyidina Hafsa's husband, he went around looking for a husband for his widowed daughter. Right, so Sayyidina Umar, of course, being the concerned father, Right, so he went first to Sayyidina Abu Bakr. So he went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr. Right, he asked Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and at this point also, because Sayyidina Ruqayyah passed away at this point. Right, so it was after the Battle of Badr. Right, also. So when Sayyidina Abu Bakr at first, and he said, Abu Bakr, my daughter, she's finishing her iddah, right, she's a widow, right, would you like to have her in marriage? And here the ulama say, you look at this, just look at this. Right, Sayyidina Omar, right, he didn't wait for people to come and propose to his daughter. Like, he's headhunting, right, for his daughter. And that's how, a righteous father is. You headhunt. So you see, a good prospect, Abu Bakr, yes, like that man, I want him to be to be the husband of my daughter. And and so he went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and he said, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, like, would you like to consider Hafsa? Right, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, I have no need right now. Right, actually no, sorry. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Osman didn't answer. Sayyidina Abu Bakr kept quiet and turned away. Right. Oh, Sayyidina Umar was very upset. He was very upset Sayyidina Abu Bakr was doing that. Right? He was like, what say? Don't want say no one lah. Don't turn away say. Like, cause like, it's like you might see it as rude. As someone says, you want to marry my daughter? Is she that bad? You don't want to marry her. So Sayyidina Umar just turned away. He just kept silent and just turned away. He didn't even, So Sayyidina Umar goes to Sayyidina Osman, okay, second prospect, right? Right, second person that I can offer my daughter to, that, he's headhunting, right, for the best man for his daughter. So he went to Sayyidina Osman, and Sayyidina Ruqayyah at that point just passed away. Right, so Sayyidina Osman is a bachelor lah again. He has no wife at that point. And said, oh Osman, right, would you like to marry Hafsa? Right, Hafsa has lost her husband. And then Sayyidina Osman said, I'm not looking for marriage right now. Right, I'm just lost my wife, like, not looking for marriage right now lah. Right, so Sayyidina was like, like, this one tak nak, right, he did, Sayyidina Abu Bakr don't want, Sayyidina Osman don't want, what am I going to do? Right, so he went to Rasulullah to complain. She went to Rasulullah to complain to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Osman. They both don't want my daughter. Like, why? So he actually went to complain. So he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he complained, Ya Rasulullah, see lah, I asked Abu Bakr, he didn't even answer me. And then asked Osman. Osman said he's not looking for marriage right now. Right, and then some said, Sayyidina Omar, right, there will be someone for Hafsa who is better than Abu Bakr, and there will be someone for Osman who is better than Hafsa. Right, so answered that. Right, and Sayyidina Omar didn't understand what that meant. Right, of course, like, what else could that mean? Right, and then thereafter some came and he sent the proposal, right, for Sayyidina Hafsa after she finished her iddah, everything. Right, after she basically, I need to also check the dates lah, all of these things, when it happened. But basically he said it's all from hadith. So in hadith it's not mentioned what dates and all that. You just learn the hadith, right? So it's from hadith that we learned. So Rasulullah when he sent the proposal, then Sayyidina Umar understood, right, what it meant, right? And then of course he accepted the proposal for Sayyidina Hafsa. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr came to him. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, oh Omar, right, and I had to approach that. I said, Omar, I sense that you were upset with me, like, when I turned away. Right? I sense you were you're not happy, like, when I turned away. And Sayyidina Umar said, yeah, I had something against you lah. Like, you reject my daughter, say. Right? And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr said that I only did that because I had heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mention her name. Right, so, and when in the Arab culture, when they say mention her name, is their adab way, their way of etiquette, right? By saying that interested in, right? So mention my name. That's what it would be. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr, when he wanted to propose Sayyidina Fatima, right, he would say to Sayyidina Aisha, "Oh Aisha, mention my name to the Prophet in regards to Fatima." Right? That's how they would say it. Right? Just to test the water lah, to see whether interested ke tak. Right, that's how they say, mention my name. Right, so he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ mention her name. Right, so I knew, right, that he was interested. Right, but I did not want to expose his secret. right? Because her iddah was not done whatsoever lah. Basically, he's the one that exposed his secret, so I kept quiet. I didn't want to say no either, because if he did not go and carry out his intention of marrying Hafsa, I would have proposed. So I didn't want to say no, right? So I couldn't say anything. Like, I cannot say yes because I had the Prophet interested in her. Right? So I don't want to cut queue, like, in a way. I don't want to cut the Prophet so long. I don't want to say no, because I don't want it to be cut off. No, right? But I don't know what to say. No answer lah, basically, right? So no, yes, no. I'm going to see what he does. Right? If he doesn't go to her and propose to her, then I will have proposed to her. I never accept the proposal, right? Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman, the one that she married that is better than Sayyidina Hafsa is Sayyidina Kulthum, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Okay, one narration about Sayyidina Salama, right, is that Sayyidina Salama, Rasulullah was at Sayyidina Salama's room when he put Al-Hassan to one side and Al-Hussein to the other side and Fatima on his lap, right? And then he recited the verse, Allah's mercy and His blessings be upon you, O people of the house. Surely He is praiseworthy, glorious. Right. So he recited those verses in Surah Hud, right? Ayat 73. Right. So Salama and her daughter Zainab was sitting there. Right. So basically he was in the house of Salama. Right. This is when the verses of Ahlul Bayt came down. So he took a cloak. Right. And Fatima was with him, and Sayyidina Ali was with him, Sayyidina Hassan and Hussein was with him, and then he wrapped them in the cloak. So why they call Ahlul Kisa. Ahlul Kisa means people of the cloak. I should wrap in the cloak and say, Ya Allah, this is my Ahlul Bayt. This is my Ahlul Bayt. This is the people of my household. This is people of my household. Right? They mean these specific individuals. So they was in the house of Sayyidina Salama, and she saw like what happened, and then she began to weep. And she's like, you left us out. Right? And then you didn't include us in the cloak. Right? And then he said to her, right, you are good the place you are at. Wherever you're at right now, that's good for you, right? So, but to show a distinguishment, right, that you are not part of this. When we talk about the Ahlul Bayt, and we're going to talk about Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, right? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And she said, you are of the house, right, but not of this section, right? So the wives are basically Ahlul Bayt, but not Ahlul Bayt, right? This is from Sayyidina Fatima. And Sayyidina Ali, right? He said that she passed away in 59 after Hijrah. She lived for 59 years after Hijrah. Right? So Rasulullah passed away at 10 or 11 after Hijrah. So she lived for a good 48, right? Now 49, 48 years. Right? After Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she was 84 years old when she died, right? And she died in the year. Right, and some narrations say that she died the same year that Sayyidina Hussein was martyred. Right, and Allahu Alam, right, she was known, right, she was known for her generosity, as if all the wives of Rasulullah, all of them were known for their generosity. They were people who were not interested in wealth. All right. Okay, so we are going on. Right, thereafter Sayyidina Salama. Okay, so we are going on to the next part on page 32. So okay. A bit heavy when you go into this study right, because details and everything, right, you're going to get into it, right? Okay, I'm following the tartib that Habib does, right? Because this book, there's khilaf as to what happened first, what happened second, right? So that Habib, wherever he will do a story, I will do that first, right? And I'll follow the tartib that Habib follows, right? So not the tartib of the book, right? Okay. Alright, so the Ghazwa of Zariqa. Right, so basically, so now Abu Sufyan, go back to Abu Sufyan. So Abu Sufyan now in Mecca, he's upset lah. What's going on? Right, so he goes around and he says that, what's wrong with all of you here in Mecca? Right, how could we just be here in Mecca and seated and enjoying our food and our women, right? And Muhammad is walking in the marketplaces free, right? No one is threatening. He's not being threatened. He's just free to do whatever he wants to do. Right? He's we should do something about this, right? And he said, no, we should. Why can't we just get rid of him? Just get rid of him lah. Like why must we wait for a war? So just kill him off. So he said, no, who here will kill him and I will give him a great reward? Who here will kill Muhammad? And I will give him a great reward. So a man stood up, right, and this man said, I will do it, right, for a great reward. I will do it. I don't fear anybody. I can go up to him and I will just kill him. Right, so Abu Sufyan said, okay, very well and good, right, go. So they had several attempts. You see how many attempts they had, right, trying to do this to Rasulullah. They don't really learn their lesson. You can't do it. You just can't do it. Right, so basically the man went to Rasulullah's masjid, right, and he hid in his cloak a dagger. So same thing. They all have a dagger somewhere and are trying to kill Rasulullah. Right, and when he entered the masjid, Rasulullah looked at him and he said, that man has the look of treachery all over his face. It's all over his face. Right, so he came and he sat down. This Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the Sahaba, they heard Rasulullah say that, so they all were like keeping an eye on the man lah, right now. Right, so the man came near Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, eventually one of the Sahabas, he pulled on the man, right, and then the dagger became exposed. So now exposed. So now they took the man and they tied him up. Right, and it was said that the man, right, the man will actually narrate some things. Right, so they tied him up and they tied him up in the masjid. Right, and then they said to him, who sent you? Right, who sent you to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And then he refused to say it, and eventually he said, Abu Sufyan. Right, Abu Sufyan was the one who sent me. Right, and then some said to him, how come you didn't do the job quickly? How come you just you loitered around trying to get away to Rasulullah? Then he said that, actually, I myself am surprised, right? because I don't fear anybody. I don't fear anybody at all. But when I walked in and I saw you and you looked at me, suddenly my heart was full of fear. I had so much fear for you. I was, shaking inside. Right? So, and I have never feared anybody at all. And then Rasul said to him, testify that there is no God but Allah and I am the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And the man said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. Right? So he bore witness, then he became a Muslim. Right? And then Rasul taught him some of Islam, what it was meant for him to learn, and he left. And he was never heard of again, this man. Right? It's not mentioned, who he was and whatsoever. Right? But it's just the story was mentioned. Right? So Rasul knew that the disbelievers are up to something. Right? They basically they're on their way to do some things. Right? So before that, right, there's one ghazwa that's here, ghazwa of Zul Riqa. Right, Zul Riqa is another ghazwa where there's no fighting happening. Right? We're going to go through all the ghazwa where there's no before Khandaq also. They're all before Khandaq. Right? And there's a narration. Imam Bukhari has the opinion that it happened after Khandaq. Right? Allahu alam. Habib actually mentions both. He said, that majority of the scholars said it happened in the 4th year, right, or the 5th year, right, and then Imam Bukhari actually gives reason as to say that it happened in the 9th year, right. So 7th year, which is Khandaq is 5th year, right. So Allahu alam, there are differences of opinion, right. So this is called the Ghazwa, right, of it's also called Ghazwa Najd, Ghazwa fighter of Kasafa, Ghazwa of Ibn Tha'alaba, Ghazwa of Ajaib. Basically, there's a lot of names for this Ghazwa. But the most common name is Ghazwa Zat al-Riqa, right? Zat al-Riqa, it means the Ghazwa whereby there were wrecks. And Riqa meaning wrecks. Okay, what happened in this Ghazwa? Right, this is actually narrated in a hadith. Right, this Ghazwa is known because of a hadith. Right, that Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, he actually, or Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he actually narrates. So he says here, right, that this Ghazwa, right, it's called the Ghazwa of Dregs, right, because they actually when they were walking, right, to go out to fight in this battle, right, they were so poor, right, they were so poor that the Muslims, right, they didn't have any footwear. They were walking barefoot, right, but they were walking in the part of a desert whereby it was so hot to walk on that their feet developed sores. Right, their feet developed sores and their skin began coming off. Right, so they were walking like that. Right, and then their toenails were coming off. Right, their feet became pitted. Right, their feet became, so there were ulcers and sores. Right, and their toenails came off. Right, so what they would do, they would tear rags from their clothing and they would wrap their feet. Right, so they can continue walking. Right, so this is what the Sahabas went through. The Sahaba, mashallah, these are the things that they really go through, and they went all the way there, and then there was no fighting. There was no fighting, right, in this Ghazwa, right. But however, whenever we say there's no fighting in Ghazwa, what happens is that they actually meet tribes along the way, and these tribes actually pledged their allegiance to Rasulullah SAW. So the second battle just now, like there were actually tribes that were around, they actually pledged their allegiance to Rasulullah, and this one also same thing. They pledged their allegiance to Rasulullah SAW. So so basically in them going out for Ghazwa, and the enemy does not show up, right? They actually gain, right, by meeting tribes along the way, right, and then presenting Islam to these tribes, and the tribes actually enter Islam and pledge bay'ah to Rasulullah SAW. And so that is this. So it's Allah Subhanahu wa Taala spreading Islam, right, in this manner, right? So it will actually happen to them, right? So Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, so at this point, right? Okay, so this. Right, during this Ghazwa also, right, it was narrated that the prayer of fear was revealed, right, to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, there's one story here I'm going to mention. The prayer of fear, if you've learned in fiqh what is the prayer of fear, right, the prayer of fear, you don't have to face the qibla, right? There are a few types of prayer of fear. Right? The most intense types that you can actually be fighting and praying at the same time, right? Because of the kind of, we mentioned before that with battles, they can take a long time. Right? So you might miss your prayers. And that actually happened in the Khandaq. They missed Zuhur, Asar, Maghrib. They missed it. Right? So they prayed all of it in the night, Isha. Right? So at night they prayed all, Qada all. Right? Because they had to be on standby, right? Because the enemies were attacking. So the whole day was spent being on standby. Right? So that is war. Right? In this battle of Ziriqa, right, there was the ayat of prayer of fear came down. Right, so prayer of fear, there are a few ways of doing it. You learn fiqh lah. If you learn fiqh, you learn that there are ways whereby your qibla is not the qibla, but the qibla faces the enemy. That is your qibla. So you can watch. Right, and then there are ways whereby you do the prayer of fear. Right, if you learn in fiqh, you learn it in fiqh. Right, so here, right, the story of Abbad bin Bishr. Right, Sayyidina Abbad bin Bishr, one of the Sahabas of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was mentioned that the Muslims took some women as captives in this battle. Right, so this battle basically what happened was that they went, right, but there was not really much of a battle, but they actually, no fighting broke out, right, so let me just read through, So the cause and the result of Ghazwa. The Ghazwa was caused by what reached the Prophet ﷺ concerning some groups, right, in this area that was waging war against him. So he went forth. Right, so these groups, they were the ones who were aggressive. Right, so he went forth to settle them lah, basically. Right, so 400 of the Sahaba, right, some say 700. Right, so he left Sayyidina Osman, Sayyidina Abu Dhar, in charge of Medina. Right, and when he reached the valley of Shuqara, right, they camped there, right, and they sent out their spies, right, to see what is going on in that situation. Right, so then they went on, right, and they reached the lands of Ghatafan, whereby the aggressors were. Right, so when they reached there, right, they didn't find anybody. The camps were there, but there was nobody there. Basically, the people fled. They fled. Right? It's happened over and over again. The Muslims will come all the way, and the enemies will flee. Right? They get scared. And they will be aggressive. They will threaten. They will what. And then when the Muslims come, they run away. Right? They no, it's not that. It's only 400. 400 is not a lot. Right? Yeah. There's a fear, maybe Allah, because it's called Rab. Rab in Arabic is a fear in the heart. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He casts this fear in their hearts. Right? So it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah puts in their heart, you sure you're going to come out against this Prophet? Right? So they will have this Rab, right, in their heart, and then they will run away. Right? So when they came, they couldn't find anybody, but they found some women, right, who were held as captives there. Right? And the people had actually left. They had run out of the mountains. They ran away and left the woman behind. You wonder like what lah this? No. This there. Right. So there was no fighting because the people were so scared. Right. So Asar prayer came in, and the Muslims, they were actually fearful that non-Muslims will attack them during Asar. Right. So because at this point, what actually happened was that the disbelievers had watched the Muslims pray previously, Zuhur. They watched the Muslims pray. So they actually said to themselves that, when they pray, they are exposed. Right? And their weapons are on the ground. Right? That's the best time for us to attack. So of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about this. Right? Allah knows what they are whispering to themselves. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Rasulullah before Asr time, right, the prayer of fear. Right? The prayer of fear, you keep your weapons to yourself. Right? And as you pray, right, you face where the enemy will be, right? And then as you pray, that you have saf. You have saf. Right? So the first saf goes down, second saf stands up in guard. First saf goes up, second saf goes down, right? To for sujood. Right? So basically the prayer of fear, prayer of khawf. Right? So that's why it was revealed in this battle. Right? So that was the reward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them. Every battle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a reward. Right? There'll be something for them in the battle. So even though they go all the way out and there's no fight, right? There's always something for them. Right, so the Muslims took this woman as captives. So they found the woman, they took them as captives. And don't think when we say captives in Islam that they were like, slaves, whatsoever. They are slaves, right, but they are treated in the best of manners. Right, so they won't even feel like they're, don't imagine like chains and like shackles and like pulling them. No lah, they just brought, just basically escorted. They're escorted, but they are captives. I mean, they belong to the Muslims, right? Because the Muslims came for battle, and they found them, and therefore they are captives. They are captives. Right? So Rasulullah SAW went off, right? And the husband of one of the captives who has been away, he came back and he heard about what happened. Basically, his people ran away, left the woman behind. The Muslims came and took the woman, right? And take the woman. Basically, we must always understand that they took the woman in the most respectful of manners. Right? They took the woman. Right, so this man, right, he went after the Muslims, right, and he will not stop until he attacked Muhammad, right, spill his companion's blood or save his wife, right. So he ran after the Muslims. So he's somebody who's, he has this possessive over his wife. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, stopped in a shop that faced him and asked, right. So they know that somebody is coming after them, right, the Muslims. So Rasulullah asked the Sahaba, who will protect us tonight? Who will stand guard for us tonight? So the two Sahaba who said that they will be Sayyidina Ammar bin Yasir and Sayyidina Abbad bin Bishr. They said that we will be the ones, Ya Rasulullah, we will spend the night in guard over the Muslims. So now what happened? Sayyidina Ammar bin Yasir and Sayyidina Abbad bin Bishr, right, they said to each other, okay, the night is long, how about we take turns? Right, one of us stands guard and the other sleeps. Okay, so we're going to take turns about this. Alright, so they stationed themselves, right, and then they said, okay, so Sayyidina Ammar laid down to sleep, right. Sayyidina Bashir said, I like the first part of the night and you take the second part of the night. Right, Sayyidina Abbad bin Bashir, he stood up, right, he began to recite. And it's actually not mentioned here, right, but it is that Sayyidina Ammar bin Sayyidina Abbad bin Bishr, Sayyidina Abbad bin Bishr, he loves Surah Kahfi. Loves Surah Kahfi. Sorry, he loves Surah Kahfi. I taught it in Tafsir class, not here. That's how you heard it for. Tafsir Surah Kahfi. Right, so he loves Surah Kahfi. So he began reciting Surah Kahfi. Right, so while he was reciting, right, the enemy actually saw, right, this the guards over the Muslim camp. So he, right, threw an arrow, right, against Abbad bin Bishr. It struck him. Right, with the first strike, he did nothing. He didn't do anything. Like, as the most he did was that he pulled out the arrow and threw it on the ground, and he continued his prayer because he didn't want to cut the Surah Kahfi. He wanted to finish Surah Kahfi. Right, he's like, because he loves Surah so much, he didn't want to stop it halfway. Right. So and the man struck him again. Right, and again he took the arrow and he pulled it out. Right, and then he continued with Surah Kahfi. Right, and then the third strike, right, he made ruku and sujud, right, so he finished Surah Kahfi already, so he ruku and then he sujud, and then he touched his companion, right, and he said that I have been hit, right, I have been afflicted, so he got up, right, and then when the man saw these two of them now getting up, like, the man ran away. Right, and then Sayyidina Ammar said, what happened to you? Like, you've been hit 3 times. Right, and then you woke me up. Right, you didn't. Not on the first shot, the third shot, then you woke me up. Right, and then he said, that, but I was reading Surah Kahfi. I was reading Surah Kahfi. I didn't want to stop until I finished it. Right, and when I finished it, right, the errors kept coming. Right, so when I finished it and I did my ruku and I finished his prayer. Right, then I was like, okay, I was gonna wake you up. Right, and then he says that it's not that I was not going to cause any harm, right? But I just want to finish my prayer first. This is Sayyidina Abbad bin Bashir. Alright. There is a lot of stories we're going to see here about Sayyidina Jabir. Right, Sayyidina Jabir is going to show himself quite a bit, right, from this point on. In the Battle of the Trench, Sayyidina Jabir is going to show also a bit more about himself. Alright, I'm going to pause there, inshallah. Alright, so alhamdulillah. Right, so we are already detailed. It's really detailed. Sirah. But alhamdulillah, because usually most classes, like when you just do Sirah briefly, they won't mention all these things. Right? But it's more for those who are doing serious study. Right? Then you actually go into all these things. Right? Any questions? Right, sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. الفاتحة أن الله يرزقنا علما نافعا وخالص مقبول وحسن التعليم دل على هدى ويسر بقول النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ولأرواح معلمينا ومشايخنا وزل الحق علينا وإلى حتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.